first time, and we are thrilled to have you here. If you're not aware, May is Mental Health Awareness Month. So that's where all the green comes in, that's the color. And we had our 22nd annual walk this past Saturday at Arthrex. We're already scheduled the next one for next year, May 3rd. I think that's the date. Watch, we'll get your emails and make sure you have it. But we really wanted to start up our speaker series again. We had in the past, and with this beautiful new space that we moved into a year ago, it has allowed us to be able to do that. So really, really excited. I'll just give just a little snippet about NAMI. If you don't know, NAMI is a national organization. It has over 650 affiliates throughout the nation. Each one is different and serves the community that it serves. For an example, there's 24 in Florida. For an example, Tallahassee just got their first employee, where we have over 30. So it just really, truly depends. We are the only one that serves children as young as infancy, all the way to 18 to 22 if they have disabilities. And that is from very generous fundraising and being beneficiaries of the Naples Children Education Foundation, founders of the Winter Wine Festival. We've been beneficiaries of them since 2007, and that has allowed us to help so many children. We transitioned this year to not just a screening and referral, but to a more clinical program. And many NAMIs are just more referral, screening, and then refer out to the community. But the needs here in Collier County are so great. I'm going to quiz you. How many people live with mental illness? What's the average? One in? You guys know? 1 in 5. But it's if you look it up, it says 1 in 4, 1 in 5. That's a number that's in competition. I'd say 1 in 4. The national average for a mental health therapist to the number of clients nationally, it's 330 to 1. Florida is 550 to 1. And then Collier, 930 to 1. And those are numbers just this year. So therefore, with our children's program, we had to bring in that clinical help because we had a family recently, I just told someone a little bit earlier, we had done an autism screening on a child, and we could take it as far as doing the screening, but then we needed a doctor to sign off on that. And the next appointment that we could get that, even with partners, was February of 25. And that's unacceptable for early intervention. My background is early learning and early intervention, and we can't wait that long. We can't wait that long, so it's so important. So we actually have a new child psychologist on our team, and she can not only, so that child that I'm talking to in particular, she was able to review that, that assessment that was done, the ADOS assessment, and now that child is getting disability, going to be applying for disability, the Medicaid waiver, so that maybe they can have some respite support in their home. They're gonna have a better placement for the new school year, and that's what we help with, that care coordination and helping the families all along their journey. And the healthcare system's hard. The healthcare system's hard to navigate. And when there's a diagnosis for a child, many times that's a grief stage too. So we help all aspects of the family, and we go into the home. So we've screened over 2,000 children this year, and we've care coordinated, which means we've done further evaluations, assessments, done home visits, attended IEP meetings, gone to doctor's appointments, whatever it may be, that will continue for close to 800 children just this school year, and that will continue. And then this space down here is our adult program, and we used to have what we call a drop-in center, but when we moved into this space, we transitioned to a life skills and supportive employment model. And we have from 18 all the way to seniors and veterans. And everybody always asks me, you put them all together? Yes, that's the teacher in me. Everybody learns together. We have people who have amazing backgrounds. We have an attorney. We have someone who had traumatic brain injury. These are our moms, our dads, our brothers, our sisters, our neighbors that need our support. And more we're finding that maybe they don't have support. So they can come here Monday through Friday. We have lunch every day. Elaine, who is serving you drinks, she's our life skills enrichment director, and we have over 100 job placements announcements this year, which we carried through. We have sewing classes, we have cooking classes, we're helping with housing. We're really helping with all aspects to help with that foundation and helping them along, because as we get older, we need to learn some of those skills over again and be there for them. So we're very proud. This year, our fiscal year ends in June. We'll be serving over altogether a little over 11,000 people, children, and all the way to seniors and veterans. So we're proud of that. So we'd love for you to get involved. Over by Bauer, raise your hand, by the lanterns over there, you'll see all their coffee mugs for all the members. There's a little bag and a little compass. And we consider ourselves here at NAMI the compass for everybody that we serve. Because that compass is a holding hand. It's the road to stability. It's a road whenever you need us. We're gonna help you stay in the right direction so we don't go backwards. And so we have a brand new ambassador program. An ambassador program has all different levels of support, but it's telling your story, telling someone else our services, hosting a party, cocktail hour, we go to pickleball courts. It's helping to raise the voice, remove the stigma. And then there's two little pebbles in here, because we've all been to Dunkin' Donuts and Starbucks and the ripple effect, right? When you go through and someone ahead of you has paid, right? Well, I want you to take these away tonight, and I want you to be the ripple effect. I want you to consider being an ambassador, and you be the ripple effect to tell the story, help remove the stigma, because we have to have mental health equal to physical health. It has to be the same, well, not always as fast, right? Depends on the person. But we need to treat it the same, because otherwise it's going to affect our physical health. So, without further ado, Jeannie Ewan, I have to give her credit. She's our Laces of Love. She supplies all our kiddos with wonderful shoes all year long. And she, her son, her niece and my son are very, very good friends. And so friends become like family. And she told me about Erin. And then I got to meet Erin. And we are so glad. I'm not going to do much of a bio because she's going to tell her story. But Erin Blechman is here, and her husband is also here. He's back there filming. Thank you so much. And without further ado, Erin, it's all you. And thank you. We're excited to hear your story.
June 3rd, 2020 was the day that my husband, Bill, and I got the call that no parent ever wants to get. And that was that sometime during the night before, our 25-year-old son, Max, had taken his life. And I remember I was still in bed, and I heard Bill crashing up the stairs, screaming, "Max is gone, he's gone." And I remember my first thought was, gone where? And then we began the daunting task of calling friends and family to tell them that we lost Max. And those were the words we used, we lost him, as if we could find him again if we wanted to. And over the course of the next week or so, we wrote his obituary, we planned his memorial service, we planned the visitation, and we did all of that sort of numb, in shock, on autopilot. And I have since learned that autopilot is really a protective mechanism. Our brains simply can't absorb everything at once, so our brain protects us and allows us to do what we have to do in the moment. Now, one of the things that I'm very thankful for is that we were upfront about the way that Max died. And that allowed us from the very beginning to elevate the conversation about his mental illness and about suicide. And I'm grateful that we had the foresight to do that. Max struggled with both depression, anxiety, and epilepsy for 8 years. And we struggled along with him. And so tonight what I want to do is share what I've learned about mental illness, suicide, and loss and grief. But before we dive into that, I want to help you get to know my precious boy. Is it on?
It was.
Was it me or was it you?
It was she.
Okay. So this is my Max, and as you can see, he was a beautiful boy. He had that big round head as a baby and those huge brown soulful eyes. He was quirky, eccentric, funny, creative, and incredibly sensitive. And his tender heart was a source of pain for him throughout his life. He was incredibly creative. He wrote short stories, music, poetry. He did stand-up comedy. He was a drummer. And he, to this day, is the most intelligent, funny, and interesting person I've ever met. No offense, honey. So, this is the last picture that we have of us as a family. This is from Mother's Day in 2020, and it was just a few weeks before we lost him. And if I had known that day that this would be the last time that we'd be together, I would have hugged him a little harder and told him I loved him a few more times. This is my favorite picture, though, of he and I. And this is from a vow renewal that Bill and I did back in 2017. Oh. There we go. And we wanted our boys to be part of that special day, so we asked Max to give a toast. And he had sort of a snarky sense of humor, so we thought that it might be a bit more of a roast than a toast. But our boy gave us the most beautiful tribute, and I'm so thankful to have those memories. And this picture just kind of sums up our relationship, him with that sweet smile and his closed eyes, and me holding his face in my hands. So this is Emmy Lou. Max adopted Emmy Lou in September of 2016, and she was a godsend for him. She was like a therapy dog of sorts, even though she wasn't trained as one, and he loved her dearly. And she has been a therapy dog for Bill and I as well. She is so loyal and sweet and intuitive and just the best dog. So I want to talk a little bit about mental illness. And the first thing is that depression is completely misunderstood. Depression is a health condition. It is not a passing mood. It's not feeling blue. It's not a character flaw, a lack of faith, or a behavioral problem. The opposite of depression is not happiness, it's motivation. And this was something that Bill and I learned while Max was alive and struggling. Depression zaps someone of their ability to do even the most basic things like get out of bed. And when Max was in a depressive episode, I would call him and I would say, honey, it's a beautiful day. Go outside, take a walk, call a friend, go to the gym. And when I think back, those comments were not just unhelpful, they were probably hurtful because he probably felt like I didn't see him or understand him or his condition. Finding medication to treat depression is like trying on shoes without knowing your size. A doctor told us that when Max was struggling. And that really sounds counterintuitive, doesn't it? This is 2024. There's something wrong with us, we take a pill and we're better. But that is not the case with medication for depression. It is very much a trial and error. And after Max passed and we went to clean out his room, he had an entire brown grocery bag full of medications that he had tried that hadn't worked for him. Depression is a disease like heart disease or diabetes. So we treat mental and physical health very differently. Beth alluded to that. And we experienced that, and so did Max during his life. Max had two illnesses of the brain. He had depression and he had epilepsy. And we got a completely different reaction from people when we shared those two different illnesses with them. The epilepsy got much more compassion and understanding, and the depression not as much. We had people tell us they didn't believe in depression. We had people ask us what he had to be depressed about. So we just treat mental and physical health differently, and we need to stop. I think this chart sums it up, and I think it shows the difference. In mental illness, the sufferer gets blamed. In physical, they get cared for. In mental illness, they're told to get over it. In physical illness, they're told you'll be supported through it. In mental illness, they're told take responsibility for your problems. In physical illness, they're told ask for help anytime. In mental illness, they're criticized for being weak and lazy. In physical illness, they're told it's a hard road, be kind to yourself. In mental illness, they're told stop being so self-indulgent. In physical illness, they're told it's a hard road, be kind to yourself. In mental illness, people are told it's a choice. In physical illness, they're told there's nothing you could have done to avoid this. So much more compassion, so much more understanding when it comes to physical illness as opposed to mental illness. And we need to correct this. We can do better. Mental illness is often demonized and criminalized. When someone is having a mental health crisis, it can be frightening. And when a 911 call is made for a mental health crisis, it is the law enforcement that is dispatched, police officers. Not mental health professionals, not counselors, not medical professionals of any kind. And we are putting our people in law enforcement at a serious disadvantage. They are often not trained or equipped, and often these situations can escalate, and the person suffering the mental health crisis can be injured or even killed. Now, this is where I need to give a shout out to Beth, because when I came here a couple of weeks ago, they were conducting their week-long training for all of law enforcement in Collier County. And I just take my hat off to you, Beth. That is so critical. That is such a testament to what this organization is doing and the desire for law enforcement to do better. So, thank you for that. So, there are many factors that impact mental illness. And this, I love this because it demonstrates just some of them. Our environment, our relationships, our physical health, our genetics, diet, stress, substance use, trauma. All of those factors come together to impact a person's mental health. And I think the really interesting thing about this chart is if you took that pink box that says physical health and put mental health in it, those would be all the factors that also impact our physical health. So we treat mental and physical health differently, but they are completely intertwined. We are one person, one being. So 67% of adults in the US believe they have had a mental health condition at some point in their life. And I think we oftentimes think a person is either mentally healthy or not. And a mental health issue can and often does present at different points in a person's life. And mental illness is not always permanent. All of us may experience a mental health condition at some point. And that's important to know. So here are some stats on suicide. Okay, what's happening? There we go.
Go back, go back.
Go back. Do I have to hold it up higher? Is it user error? Okay, so here are just some stats. 84 men a week die by suicide. 75% of all suicides are males. 25% of men live with a mental health illness, either diagnosed or otherwise. Men are less likely to get help. So we really need to encourage the men in our lives to speak up. When we talk about suicide, we shouldn't say that someone committed suicide. Instead, we should say they died by suicide. The word committed is often used to refer to an illegal or an immoral act. We say that a person committed a crime, they committed a murder, they committed a robbery. And suicide is a tragedy. It is not a crime. And terminology really matters. And when we change the way we talk about suicide, we can help to reduce the stigma associated with it. I love this quote by Matt Haig, he's an author. He says, "Suicide is not selfish. Suicide is normally death caused by the illness of depression. It is the final symptom, final collapse under unbearable weight. Suicide is a tragedy. Try not to judge what you can't understand." If you're not familiar with Matt Haig, he's an author who has struggled with his own mental health issues and even had a suicide attempt. He's written books like The Midnight Library, a work of fiction, and a nonfiction book titled Reasons to Stay Alive. And this quote really illustrates how so many people view suicide. And Bill and I know that. After Max passed away, we had people say to us, I can't believe he did this to you. I'm so angry at him for leaving you. And we have never been angry with him. We know that he was in tremendous pain, and he felt like that was the only option open to him. So since Max died, we have become connected to the AFSP, that's the American Foundation for Suicide Prevention. We have participated in their Out of Darkness walks. These are walks that are conducted around the country in different communities, and it brings together people that have been impacted by suicide. And it is really sobering and comforting to know how many people have been touched by suicide. And if you're not aware or familiar with AFSP, they are bringing awareness and education to mental illness, and they are the leader in scientific research for suicide prevention. You may also not know, or may, that there is a relatively new suicide hotline. It's a 988 number that replaced a very long 1-800 number, so it's easier for people that are in crisis to get help quickly. And finally, the semicolon has become the suicide prevention symbol, and the reason is that that illustrates or connotates a continuity of a life rather than an end of one. So grief, I want to talk a little bit about that now. I have learned that grief is love with nowhere to go. And when I say I was overwhelmed and overcome by my grief for Max, it is such an understatement. And I was so devastated for so long that I really thought that there was something wrong with me. And I didn't realize that my love for Max didn't die with him, so of course I felt this tremendous overwhelming grief. I still love him, but he's not here for me to demonstrate that love to. And my grief, I've realized, is proportional to my love for him. When we love deeply, we grieve deeply. It's just that simple. Now, the issue is that our culture treats grief like a problem to be solved. We live in a fix-it culture. And a lot of us don't realize that grief is a normal and natural response to losing someone we love. And we will all experience loss and grief in our lives. And grief needs to be acknowledged and witnessed first and foremost. That is the number one need of people that are grieving. And we can't fix those that are grieving, and we can't cheer them up. We just need to witness their grief and acknowledge their pain. So I like this graphic because it illustrates the stages of grief in theory and in reality. Now, the stages of grief are denial, anger, bargaining, depression, acceptance, and I thought they were linear. I thought you went from one to the next to the next. And for those of us that have been in grief, we know that they're anything but linear. We can experience them all at once, and we cycle through them again and again and again. And so if we think about grief in a linear fashion, we're really setting ourselves up for failure. What is acceptance? So I really struggled with acceptance for a long time. I fought against it. And that's because I was living in this left side of this graphic. I was thinking, Max is gone. I hate that he's gone. I wish he wasn't gone, obviously. My whole life is ruined now that he's gone. I'm always going to be in this level of pain, and I can't stand it. And everything in my life would be better if he were still here. And it wasn't until I realized that acceptance is just acknowledgement of reality that I honestly began to heal. Because that's all it is. It's not approval. Doesn't mean that I like it. I still hate it. But acknowledging that it is reality is what has allowed me to move forward. So I think we should start a campaign to remove the verbiage of stages of grief and replace that with cycles of grief. Because we really do cycle through those emotions again and again. They are not linear, and they're also not prescriptive. but they are helpful in understanding what we may experience, and frankly, what most of us experience. So, grief impacts a person emotionally, mentally, and physically. And I was shocked and surprised by the physical impacts of my grief. Prior to losing Max, I thought grief was just an emotion. I didn't realize that it impacted all parts of us. And so I had difficulty sleeping, I had headaches, I had stomach aches, I had racing thoughts, loss of appetite, and I even had depression. And that's because, again, we are a whole person, and of course, a loss so devastating is going to impact all of us. So this is a Bible verse that has brought me a lot of comfort, and I frankly think it should be like a bumper sticker or something, because it really tells us how we should relate to people that are grieving. It says, rejoice with those who rejoice, sharing one another's joy, and weep with those who weep, sharing one another's grief. And so it says to weep with those who weep. It doesn't say to cheer up those who weep. It doesn't say to distract those who weep. It doesn't say to admonish those who weep. And it says to share in their grief. It doesn't say judge their grief, ignore their grief. We just need to witness it. And there is a lot of wisdom in this just short Bible verse. So I've heard that when somebody's going through a trial, the very best thing we can do is show up and shut up. And when we come alongside someone who is suffering, we feel like we need to say the right thing, the perfect thing, and there is no thing to say. There is nothing that is going to comfort a person who has experienced a devastating loss. And often the very best thing to say is nothing at all. And so it's just important to sit with the person who's in grief and offer them the ministry of our presence. That is so powerful. And that is what Bill and I experienced after Max passed. Within hours, our home was full of people. I didn't know that was customary. I didn't know that that's what you were supposed to do when somebody died. And it was so incredibly comforting. They were just there. They were handing us plates of food. They were just sitting beside us, letting us cry on their shoulder. I had one friend who came from out of town and stayed for 2 weeks with us. So that kind of ministry of presence is so very powerful, and it's far better than any words we can ever say. So my faith has been shaken by our loss. I am a person of faith, and I prayed for Max daily for 8 years because he struggled for that long. So every day I would sit down or kneel down and pray for him. Max was on the prayer list of probably more than 100 people. We had prayer gatherings at our home to pray for his healing. And I remember walking through my neighborhood and really feeling the Lord say to me, he's going to be okay. So of course I thought he was going to be okay here. I thought he was going to have a tremendous testimony of healing and restoration and redemption. And so when he died, I thought, this isn't how this story was supposed to end. And I was devastated. My prayers weren't answered and my world was rocked. So another Bible verse that has brought me comfort, and I basically modeled this. It says, therefore I will not keep silent. I will speak out in the anguish of my spirit. I will complain in the bitterness of my soul. I was really angry with God, and I railed against him. And I understood, and I was also counseled by some very faithful friends and pastors, that God could handle my anger. He could handle my bitterness. He could handle my anguish and my despair, because I felt betrayed and abandoned by him. Now, there have been days that I have felt Jesus pulling me closer. And when I look back from this point, almost 4 years later, I see too many God moments to count. A friend of mine calls them whispers from heaven. And it's made me realize that God was with me, even when I haven't felt him, even when I didn't want to see him. He was there. And he will continue to be with me. And he is patient and loving and compassionate, no matter what I'm doing. And I'm very thankful for that reminder. So I want to talk a little bit about some tips that I've learned since losing Max. Some of them are practical, some of them are creative, but the first couple is therapy and marriage counseling. Bill and I both had a counselor, and a therapist and a marriage counselor that we were seeing prior to Max dying, because he was sick for a long time, and that was a strain on us individually and on our marriage. And those people have been invaluable. I cannot tell you how helpful they have been in helping us manage our grief individually and as a couple. Support group. So about a year after Max died, Bill and I joined a suicide survivor support group run by this lovely man right here, Bob Riley. He's been running it for 37 years. And joining that group was instrumental in our healing, because we were surrounded by a group of people who could normalize our experience, validate all of the feelings that we had. We felt like they truly understood us. And that is such a powerful thing in healing. Medication. I had to take an antidepressant for a couple of years, and because my normal grief turned into a more clinical depression. And that's okay. Medication is not a sign of weakness. It's a tool that's out there, and if we need it, I really believe we should utilize it. And I did. I needed it. Creative outlets. There were a couple of things that we did. The first was that I journaled, and it just helped me to make sense of my swirling thoughts and emotions. And all of those journal entries, then I compiled into a book that I later released, and I'll talk about that in a minute. We also installed a Max Memorial Garden on our property. We had friends who gave us a bench and a plaque and a stone and a tree and plants. And so we installed this beautiful memorial garden right at the entrance of our driveway. So I see it every time I come home or leave my house. And it's also a place for me to sit and just talk to my boy. And I'm very thankful for that. And it was also something physical and practical for me to do with my grief. And that's really powerful. Now, the other couple of things are things maybe not to do. Don't numb your feelings. And the ways in which we can numb our feelings are too numerous to count. Busyness, shopping, TV, drugs, food, alcohol. And the thing about numbing is that it only works for a certain period of time. And then those feelings come back, and they often are expressed in unhelpful and unhealthy ways. So it's really important to feel those feelings, as painful and dark as they are. The other thing, it's really important to be honest with ourselves and others and to reframe our expectations. I know I've set sort of an arbitrary deadline for myself of 1 year. I thought, okay, this is going to be really painful for a year, and then at that point I'll probably feel a little bit better. Well, when that year mark rolled around and I felt as bad, if not worse, as I had felt prior to that, again, I thought there was something wrong with me. And so there is no time frame for grief. We're going to do it in our own way, in our own time. There's no right or wrong way to grieve. And so we're really doing ourselves a disservice when we set some sort of arbitrary timeline, deadline, expectation on how we're going to grieve or when we might get through it. So I mentioned my book, and all of those journal entries that I wrote during the 18 months following Max's death became a book that I released a couple of years ago. I worked with a graphic designer. Her name is Sarah Nelson. And in the days and the weeks following Max's death, I kept seeing the same bird over and over and over again. It was like a little message from heaven that he was okay. And so Sarah decided to make the bird sort of the theme of the book. So she created 6 beautiful original illustrations that appear throughout the book. And I'm just so thankful that she took a book with really heavy content and made it so beautiful. So I do have my books available for purchase, and I really want to thank you all for coming. Since losing my Max, my primary motivation is to help others get to know and fall in love with him like we do. It's also to elevate the conversation about mental illness, suicide, loss, and grief. And so I appreciate you all taking the time out of your busy schedules to come here and to just share this with us. So, thank you, and God bless. So, what we'd like to do now is open up the floor for questions. Beth is here to handle anything from a mental health standpoint, but is there anybody who has any questions that they'd like to ask? Mike?
During those years leading up, did you think this could happen?
Yeah, we did. So while Max was struggling, he was probably hospitalized 5 times for suicide ideation. And he always checked himself into the hospital. So we took that as a very good sign. We thought, he doesn't want to die. He wants to stay. But we knew that it was always a possibility, and we always feared that call. So when it came, Bill refers to it as the monster was out from under the bed. You know, it finally happened. But I will tell you, it didn't make that call any easier to deal with. We were still completely blindsided by it, because as long as he was with us, we had hope. And then when he was gone, that hope was gone. So, yeah, we didn't expect it. We're still completely unprepared. Thanks.
You have another son,
We do.
and how is he?
So, his name is Sam, and he is Max's younger brother. They were very close, and Sam is doing okay. Right after Max passed away, the daughter of one of my very dear friends came alongside Sam, and she is a girl who has been through some stuff herself. So she has depth and she has grit, and she was his companion, his friend, his confidant, his counselor, and they were just married in December. I'm very happy to say. But I think she has been a big part of Sam being able to process. Because I will tell you, Bill and I were so wrapped up in our own grief that it was really hard to attend to Sam and his. So we are forever grateful. Her name is Julia. She is beautiful inside and out. And we're forever grateful for her for helping our Sam, or our Sasa, as we call it.
That's great.
Yes.
A difficult question. You indicated that this brought you closer to a relationship with God, but you really didn't elaborate how.
So,
Overcoming, obviously, the anger that you had and not answering your prayers and in fact sabotaging all that you had hoped.
yeah. So I would say that I had a close relationship with God going into this crisis.
You indicated that.
And I relied on my faith a lot during those years that he was sick, because it was really all I knew to do. And so, but the story turned out so differently than what I had hoped or expected, that I really turned my back on the Lord. And it's taken me a while. I'm still in the process of working my way back. So, I think I just continue to do the things that I've been doing before. We continue to go to church. We continue to stay connected to a faith community. I continue to do Bible study, albeit half-heartedly. So I continue to do all the things that I had done prior to losing Max when I was walking with God. And I think it was through that I came back to it. But it's a work in progress. It was almost like a fake it till you make it kind of thing, and I'm still making it. So, does that answer your question?
So there was not a particular revelation that you had in terms of wanting to return to.
No, I would say it was a series of small revelations. It was a series of small God moments, whispers from heaven, recognizing those in hindsight when I didn't recognize them in the moment, and knowing that he was always there. Make sense? Okay. Yeah.
Erin, can you share with them a little bit about some of the consulting you do and what you offer, your grief counseling and stuff?
Yeah, thanks.
Yeah.
So, I released my book in April of 2022, and it has allowed me to connect with people really from all over the world. And it has created so many great conversations and such great support. But felt like I needed to do more. So I also became a certified grief educator. And one of the things that I offer in addition to these community presentations is support groups. So I run short-term online support groups, and they're general grief. They're not just specific to child loss, although I have to be honest, that's a lot of what I attract, mothers who have lost sons, because that's my story. And it is really my honor to run these groups for these people who have experienced a devastating loss on their own, and to see the way they bond just in a short period of time and love and support one another. So that is definitely a passion of mine that I will continue to do, because I just think it's so needed. When we're grieving, we all think we're doing it wrong. We all think that there's something wrong with us. And it's so validating to be with a group of people who help us understand we're not alone and we're not doing it wrong. So, does that answer the question? Thanks. Yeah.
I just really want to thank you for the way you explain grief not linear. I had never heard that concept, and I too thought they were linear, and it's almost sort of allowing someone to have grief at different times in their life, in a way. So thank you for that.
Oh, of course, thank you. I think we need to change the word. At stages, it's a bad word to describe a grief model. Because, think about stages of development in a child. They don't go backwards, they move forward. And so I think that's why you can help me with my campaign. Cycles of grief. Get rid of stages. Yeah.
I'd like to add that grief is different with the relationships that you have. I lost my husband. That was way different than when I lost my mom. And losing my son has been way different. So, you cannot judge by a grief that you had before. They're all different.
That is so true. I'm really glad you brought that up. Yeah. We lost Max in June of 2020, and I just lost my mom in November of last year. And my grief, it's like it's not even the same thing. It's so different. So I'm really glad you brought that up. Which is why we can't judge a person's grief. We can't even judge our own grief, because it's different. It's different based upon who has died and the way in which they died. Like for example, Max died in a traumatic way. So I wasn't just dealing with his loss, but I was dealing with the trauma of the way in which he died. And so there's so many different layers and complexities to grief. I'm really glad you brought that up. I'm sorry.
Well, can I just add that losing a child is out of natural order. And that's why it's so traumatic, because we're not supposed to outlive our children, right? And I love you that you're emphasizing support groups, because to me that's the only thing that works. Because you are allowed to talk about your feelings, and those people understand what you're talking about. Your friends try to help you, which is great, but you can't get to that level. You have to get those feelings out, but you have to do it with other people going through the same thing.
Yeah, there's nothing more validating than sharing
Right.
and seeing somebody not their head.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you for bringing that up.
I just start off with the same thing for being here today. I'm here with my mother. She was the one who invited me. She lost her daughter, my oldest sister, 2 years ago. But I just want to know if Sam ever mentioned, because I know my older sister, my second oldest sister, or my oldest sister passed away 7 days after she had turned 30. She had just had her 30th birthday. And my second older sister, her next birthday coming up is her 30th birthday. And I know she's been struggling with the idea that she is now considered the oldest sister, and that she will eventually, like the rest of me and my siblings, will be older than Emily ever was. Did Sam ever say anything about that feeling? I don't know if he's become older than Max now, or.
He is, yeah, he's 26. No, he hasn't expressed that to us. He might have expressed it to his wife. any sort of attention to the parents. And so I'm glad that you're here. And you definitely have a different kind of grief than your mom does. And so does your sister.
I just want to say I appreciate the distinction you made, depression being a lack of motivation rather than happiness. You know, I feel like that's a very helpful thing to people to hear and to understand.
Yeah, absolutely. And when you stop and really consider it, it makes a ton of sense, right? None of us are happy all the time, but if we have the motivation to live our lives, to do what we're, supposed to do, then
Basic self-care, like you said, is the motivation to do anything.
yeah, it's just not there. Yeah, thank you.
Hi, thank you so much for tonight. I'm so glad I'm here. And my question is, I wonder what age would be an appropriate age to discuss grieving, because we don't talk about it when we're kids. Like the younger generations. And also, I was wondering, like, I know that you're reaching out tonight. I'm wondering if you would ever consider, having like a TED Talk if you haven't done that already, just so that we could reach more people. Because I learned so many things from you tonight that I've never heard. In the way, the words that I was writing things down because I wanna remember them.
Oh, thank you.
We're just getting started with Erin.
She doesn't know. But going back to when is an appropriate time to talk, I think as young as they are, that's another thing. Children are often forgotten because we think that we don't want to burden them, that they're not old enough or mature enough to accept or to process what's happened. But they experience loss when someone dies.
Even the pets.
Yeah.
Pets.
Yeah, exactly. And so I think if you have a child, whatever age they are, if someone has died, that's the time to talk about it in an age-appropriate way. Take your cues from them. Maybe get them involved in some sort of program to help them process. But yeah, it's never too young. It's never too young. You reminded me, I'm actually reading a book. It's called 57 Fridays, and it's written by a woman named Myra Sack. She and her husband lost their 2-year-old daughter to Tay-Sachs disease, and it just came out, and it is so beautifully written. Just such a beautiful book, their journey. But while their daughter was literally dying before their eyes, they gave birth to another child. And the little girl was, I think, about 6 months old when her sister passed, but she grieved. And they talk about her, when she got old enough to toddle over to her sister's picture, picking it up and hugging it and kissing it. So they, no matter what age, they get it. They know that something's missing. So I don't think it's ever too young to start. Yeah.
Thank you for your message. Could you describe your online grief counseling and what the expectation level is, outcomes you would expect, duration, just a little bit?
Yes. So the groups that I offer are online for short term, 6 weeks, because I think sometimes when you're grieving, that's all you can commit to. But I do have people who repeat and do multiple groups. But we meet for 6 weeks for an hour on Tuesday evenings via Zoom, and we just talk about our loved ones. I start off each group with a short teaching time, something related to grief. So we might talk about the dreaded stages of grief. We might talk about different types of grief. We might talk about how to let go of guilt, release our feelings, navigate grief in a grief illiterate society. So there's always a little bit of teaching, and then it's just open discussion. So, and I think the most beautiful thing about those groups is the way that the people come together and love and support one another. It's not like they're coming to hear me talk for an hour. They're sharing their stories, and they're sharing encouragement with each other, and it's really a beautiful thing to see.
Thank you.
And how could people get in touch with you for that?
So I have some cards up here, and they have, I think, they definitely have my email address. I think they have my social media handles as well. So yeah, grab something if you want to take some for some friends.
Erin, I just want to tell you, you know, my son struggles with depression, and you have been such a confidant. I mean, way before Max passed away, you and I had been friends. But your love for Jesus Christ and what you picked up and carried to this moment is amazing. And I just commend you. I'm so proud of you. And you know, how many people just go under a rock and say all those things that you listed that you did, but you're here and you give us a lot of hope. So thank you. Thank you so much.
Yes.
All right, well, if there's no more questions, I'll be up here. We have my books, as I said, available, and feel free to come up and just look at them, or talk to me, or just talk to each other. There's still lots of food, right?
Very much so.
And still looks like there's lots of wine too, so grab a glass. Thank you. Thank you so
I didn't recognize you.
Yes.
Turn this off.